Too many writers think that killing a character equals emotional impact. But after 25 years of writing and studying fantasy, here's what I've seen. The scenes that stick with readers aren't always the bloody ones. They are often the quiet ones. So in this video, I'll show you why death isn't the emotional high point you think it is, how to write heartbreak with restraint, not shock, and what actually gets readers to cry and keep turning the page. To start, let me show you what actually makes readers cry, because it's not what most writers think. Imagine a kid waiting by the window for someone who promised they'd visit, and the sun goes down before they show. Nothing dramatic happens here, but the feelings of that kid's disappointment, it stays with you. The same thing happens in writing. We cry because we see ourselves, or at least because we can imagine what that person is going through. Like the soldier who won the war but comes back to find that his family had moved on with their life. Or in the dying mother who teaches her child one last spell before saying goodbye forever. You don't need death itself in this scene. You might not even need a death at all. The most emotional moments aren't driven by what happens. They are shaped by what it means. Frodo sailing away at the end of Return of the King didn't need anyone to die. The grief is in the goodbye, in knowing what's been lost can't ever fully return. What makes it work is the build-up we've been through. The entire journey has earned that farewell. We've walked beside him long enough to feel the weight of what he's giving up and the peace he's finally allowed to have. And if you want to write scenes that really hit your readers without just killing someone off, I've put together a free cheat sheet with my 5 favorite emotional moves covered in this video. You can find the link in the description below. Moving on, not every character is ready to face their emotional truth though. Some don't break because of what happens, they break because they won't let themselves feel it. One of the hardest scenes I ever wrote was a girl being expelled from the Magical Academy. She wasn't planning to say goodbye to the one person she'd missed the most. If she kept her head down and walked fast, maybe she could outrun the guilt, the anger, the ache that were starting to rise. She was nearly through the main hall when she heard his voice behind her. You really wanted to leave without saying goodbye? At first she stopped but didn't turn around. For a second she considered walking faster, pretending she hadn't heard. But she couldn't. Not with him. While he was the head of the academy, he was also the closest thing she'd ever had to a father. So she turned and started raging, telling him it didn't matter, that he'd made his choice, that the rules of the academy were nonsense. And then she saw it. The look that made it all worse. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised. He just looked at her like he still saw the girl he'd stood up for 100 times, and maybe still would have if he could. That's another way to break a reader, by showing a character who's fighting the wrong thing. Not the injustice or the consequences, the ache underneath it. It's about the fear of feeling what you actually feel. If you want that to work in your story, give your character something to protect, but make it emotional, not physical. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's fear of disappointing someone they actually love. Let them lash out to keep that truth at bay. Let the reader see what they are really trying to avoid here. And then, don't resolve it. Don't give them a neat moment of clarity. Let them break down then, or walk away still pretending they are fine. Because often the gap between what they feel and what they actually show, that's where the reader feels it too. But with that said, sometimes the heartbreak isn't in what a character hides, in everything they've reached for and still couldn't hold on to. Picture this, a girl grows up dreaming of joining the elite mage guard, her whole identity wrapped around the idea. She trains for years, gives up friends, family, everything. And finally she stands before the High Council ready to take her oath. A minute later, someone steps forward and tells her the ceremony is postponed. There's no reason and there's no timeline given. It's just said, not today. She's being told to wait in the side hall. And she does that all night. And we are right there with her, waiting, fearing, unable to understand what is happening. In the morning, they're inducting someone else and relieve her of her duties without an explanation. That's the heartbreak of lost potential, of potentially unfair decisions. It's watching the moment someone should have had evaporate. So how do you write this kind of scene? Well, you start by making the dream real. Show the moments when they almost had it, the times they believed they were close, and the hours they sacrificed chasing it. Then, and this is key, take it away just before the finish line. Show us the character unpacking the box they never got to move, or walking a hallway they were supposed to command. This works best when you've made the dream feel inevitable, and then shatter the illusion. It's living with what didn't happen that makes this hurt so much. But emotional impact isn't always about the character's failure either. It's often about relationships that almost worked. So next, let me show you how broken bonds break us hardest. Consider two sisters who grow up in a mountain village where magic is tightly regulated. One becomes a respected healer, the other pushes boundaries. Quiet experiments, small rule breaking, nothing malicious. For years, they cover for each other, share spells, laugh about getting caught. But when the council starts cracking down, the healer has to make a choice. Protect her sister or keep her place. In the end, she says nothing. As a result, her sister, feeling betrayed, leaves the village without confrontation or farewell. Years later, they pass each other at a market. Their eyes meet for a moment, a lingering moment loaded with the bond they once shared. As readers, we'd hope they'd find their way back here, that somehow forgiveness can mend what once was broken. But in the end, one of them lowers her head and goes on with their business as if nothing happened. This hurts because we see something meaningful fall apart when it could have been saved. When two characters love each other but can't or won't anymore, that hits different. It reminds readers of every real friendship that faded, every sibling they don't talk to anymore, every mentor they outgrew or betrayed or lost. The key for all this, though, is foundation. A goodbye doesn't work unless the bond felt real first. You can't just toss in a breakup and expect it to sting. You have to earn the pain. So give them history. Let them laugh together, disagree and come back, have inside jokes. Let them care. And then let the pressure build. Maybe their goals start to drift apart, or maybe they are loyal to different causes. Maybe one of them crosses a line the other cannot ignore. Whatever it is, don't let it all explode at once. Let it fracture through small things. A harsh word not taken back, a silence that grows too long, a decision made without the other. And when the final moment comes, don't override it. Just let it hang. You see, the pain isn't just in the break. It's in knowing they almost stayed whole until they didn't. Relationships aren't the only thing that time wears down, because even the strongest bonds cannot outrun what happens when you wait too long. Writing emotional payoff is like making tea. The flavor only develops if you give it time. But leave the bag in too long and it turns bitter. Stories are no different. Time itself, when used well, can crush us, because time takes things. It erodes possibilities, distances people, and forces choices we cannot undo. That's what makes certain moments hit so hard. Not because something bad happened, but because something never got to happen. If you want to use this well in your story, what you need is emotional weight. Give your characters things they almost did, regrets that sit between chapters, gaps between scenes that quietly reveal too much time has passed. Maybe your character meant to reach out to someone and didn't. Maybe they were planning to explain themselves after the mission, after the war, after one more winter. And by the time they try, the other person has moved on or isn't even there anymore. That's how you write time as damage. Not a clock ticking, but a window closing. What I mean by that is to ask what changed while your character waited too long. What grew cold while they focused on something else? What moment can no longer happen because they missed the window where it could? You don't need years to pass for that. But you do need the reader to feel what was lost because the moment was missed. Time takes away the chance to act while the action would have mattered. Now, if you haven't grabbed the cheat sheet yet, don't miss it. These 5 emotional tools will help you craft scenes that stick with readers long after they finish your book. Links still in the description below. And having said that, not every painful scene comes from something lost though. Some of them come right after a win. The kind of scene that hits harder than failure is a win that costs something permanent. Not because the character messed up, but because the goal and the prize couldn't both be held at once. Bittersweet victories work when your character reaches what they set out to do, but loses something along the way that mattered just as much. And it works best when the reader sees both sides, what they gained and what they had to leave behind to get there. In Dragon Age Origins, if a player romances Alistair and then chooses to make him king, there's a path where he accepts the crown but breaks things off. It's not cruel or angry, it's just duty. He can't be the ruler Ferelden needs and stay with you. And so the moment that should be nothing but triumphant, his coronation, is cut with something else. You got what you fought for, but not all of it. That's how you write this kind of emotion. Not through grand tragedy, but through a visible personal trade-off. That's what makes it land, when we see the success clearly, but see the loss just as clearly in the behavior of the character. And this doesn't have to be romantic. This also works for characters who walk away from home, from old loyalties, from pieces of themselves they can't bring with them anymore. The emotional impact doesn't come from what was taken, it comes from what they choose to give up to succeed. Now, writing scenes like that, the ones that ache, the ones that stay, isn't just about talent. It's about knowing what your story is really built to carry. And that usually starts before you write the first chapter. So watch this video here next, where I'll show you how just 15 scenes can form the emotional spine of an entire fantasy novel.